What if I told you that there was a Sonic game that Sega tried to bury and hide from you? And what if I told you that this game is a contender for the greatest game ever made, according to IGN, who gave it a 10 out of 10? Bet you've never been told that before. Yep, we're talking about Sonic Pocket Adventure for the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Strap in, folks. Let's dive in. So before I talk about this game, I have to talk about the context behind its release. It was initially released on December 4th, 1999 in North America. At this time, the most recent game in the Speedy Blue Hedgehog's lineage was the major retool Sonic Adventure. While Sonic had a future on Sega's home console hardware, he lacked a home on handhelds. The last Sonic game released for a Sega handheld was Sonic Blast for the Game Gear in 1996, and Sega seemingly didn't want to develop a new handheld at this time, so they looked to the handheld market of the current generation for a place to put out handheld games. There were three main handheld game consoles this generation. The Game Boy Color was obviously the most popular, but given that Nintendo and Sega were fierce competitors during this time, they obviously weren't going to dip their toes there. Next was the Wonder Swan by Bandai, which was fairly successful, selling 3 million units in its lifetime, but it didn't come out until March of 1999, and when it did, it only came out in Japan, and considering the fact that Sonic is most popular literally anywhere except Japan, that wasn't a viable option. So Sega made a deal with SNK to release games on their handheld, the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Sega also partnered with SNK to create a link cable between the Neo Geo Pocket Color and the Dreamcast. This deal produced Sonic Pocket Adventure, the first Sonic game to be released on a non-Sega console. Well, besides Sonic Jam for the Gamecom, and Sonic CD, which was ported to Windows in 1996. This game was handled by SNK rather than a Sega studio. A huge portion of the people who worked on this game later went on to form or join DIMPS after SNK went bankrupt, and would later go on to create the Sonic Advance games, the Sonic Rush games, and the 3DS ports of Sonic Generations and Sonic Lost World, and Sonic 4. But they ended up making Sonic Advance right after this, and SNK makes great games, so it seems we're in good hands here. Anyways, there's not that much interesting about this game's development, other than the fact that the Sonic sprite originally had black eyes instead of green eyes. Sometimes. That doesn't mean it was made before the redesign though, as the console came out 4 months after Sonic Adventure was already released in Japan, so it must have just have been that they were worried about its color limitations, but changed their mind. I like this Sonic sprite a lot. My favorite detail is how he looks at the player for a second before tapping his foot. It looks funny. Anyways, let's get into the actual game. We start off in Neo South Island Zone. Funny how it's called Neo South Island because it reminds me a lot of Emerald Hill from Sonic 2. Then we have Secret Plant, which reminds me a lot of Chemical Plant from Sonic 2. Then we have Cosmic Casino, which reminds me of Casino Night from Sonic 2. No, it can't be, because after that we have Aquatic Relics, which looks an awful lot like Aquatic Ruin from Sonic 2. This is just taking levels from Sonic 2. What's next? Sky Chase? Oh, actually no. It's a fight with Knuckles, who has black eyes for some reason. Probably color limitations. And also, why is he fighting Sonic? But at least it's taking inspiration from more than Sonic 2 now. And that's literally just Sky Chase. They didn't even rename it. It's just Sky Chase. Now, this game gets the unfair reputation of being a remake of Sonic 2, but it really isn't. It takes inspiration from other games, like how most of the music is remixed from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and Gigantic Angel, which is based on Scrap Brain from Sonic 1, albeit with elements of Metropolis from Sonic 2. Also, Eggman changes his clothes to his modern design partway through the game. That's cool. But yeah, this game mostly pulls from Sonic 2. Now, to answer the question that's on all of your minds, is it a 10 out of 10? Hell no! But it's still fun. Honestly, I would call it a better Sonic 4. The physics are off, you only play as Sonic, and all of the stages are derivative, plus it's made by people who would go on to forum dimps who developed Sonic 4. But it also contains their usual terrible level design philosophy. Guys, there's a reason the classic Sonic games didn't include bottomless pits that often. Anyways, there's also a hidden final boss only accessible by getting all the Chaos Emeralds, which are accessed through half-pipe special stages, which are fine. At least unlike Sonic 2, you don't have Tails with you to ruin everything. This final boss is very underwhelming, and as with every Sonic game between 1994 to 2010, you can't play as Super Sonic in stages. But it's fun, and I'd recommend checking it out. You can definitely tell the developers were big fans of Sonic, and that's always a plus. Oh yeah, and there's also a 2-player mode where you can play as Tails. Literally no one has ever played this unironically. And you can collect puzzle pieces throughout the game to complete puzzles. But how has this game fared since it came out? Well, aside from people constantly pointing out the IGN thing because they think IGN is some singular entity whose whole purpose is to hate on Sonic the Hedgehog, this game doesn't have much of a legacy and hasn't seen a re-release, ever. But it's much worse than that. Sega is seemingly trying to hide this game's existence. When SNK re-released a bunch of Neo Geo Pocket Color games in the Neo Geo Pocket Color Selection series, you would think that with Sonic Pocket Adventure being one of the console's most popular games, it would be included, but it wasn't. Must I remind you that this console only has 73 games overall, and they included 20 of them in these collections. And it isn't just a first-party affair either. Third-party titles appear on these collections. Also, the very, and I must stress this, very comprehensive encyclopedia released for the series' 30th anniversary in 2021 doesn't include any mentions of it at all. According to writer Ian Flynn, he wasn't allowed to even mention it in the book because of legal issues. Legal issues? With SNK? Little old SNK? Of course, Sega of all companies would have beef with SNK. But I don't know why. Capcom didn't have any problems with letting SNK re-release games with their license attached, so what's Sega's problem? Well, I have a theory, and it all has to do with the game's love of the Sonic 3 soundtrack. Do I even need to tell you the ever so obscure fact that Michael Jackson did some music for Sonic 3 but went uncredited? Did you know Super Mario Bros. 2 is actually Doki Doki Panic? While we don't have specific credits for each and every song on the Sonic 3 soundtrack, we do have an idea of what the tracks that Michael Jackson and his team composed for the game were. Carnival Night, Ice Cap, and Launch Base were all infamously removed from re-releases like the Sonic and Knuckles collection and Sonic Origins. Ice Cap is literally confirmed to be based on an unreleased song from one of Jackson's team members' old bands. The ending theme was replaced in Sonic and Knuckles, the mini-boss theme was replaced in Sonic and Knuckles, and seemingly contains vocals from Jackson, and Knuckles' theme was replaced in Sonic and Knuckles. It's a very simple drum loop, and it seems that the composers foolishly put this in Sonic Pocket Adventure, thinking it would slide. But it seems that this one very simple, not at all too terribly unique drum loop is the entire reason you can't play this game today. Unless you use emulators.